welcome to our first episode of 2025. It is the first episode of 2025. It's happening. Thank you to all our listeners who have seen us grow throughout 2024. We cannot wait to bring you more in the new year. We've got some really, really exciting things planned. But first, welcome to our review episode of 2024. I'm joined by very special guests. I'll introduce Luca Di Natale, Lockie Edwards, and Tom Brady to the show to chat about our top 10 favorite films of 2024. How are we, guys?
Going well, thanks.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Good?
very good.
Yeah, really well.
That's good. What do we think of the year in movies? It's been, I think, a very interesting year. What have we thought?
Very, very diverse. A lot of different things. A lot of returns to old cinema, sequels and stuff like that. Yeah, very entertaining.
Yeah, definitely. Did you guys get a chance to go to the movies much, or is a lot of this sort of home viewing?
Yeah.
How was that?
A lot of in cinema. I mean, I work at a cinema, so I'm very strong on like the in cinema experience. And yeah, there were a lot of movies that deserved the big screen experience this year.
Mm. Yeah, a
Absolutely.
lot of blockbusters this year, felt like.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah. I've always been wondering, I feel like everyone has had a variety of experiences in the movie theater. There's sort of been so many big crowd pleasers. And I wanted to ask you guys, what was sort of that best cinema experience of the year? It doesn't necessarily have to be the best movie, but just that clap your hands, the audience was there, turned up and turned on for the film that was being played. What do you reckon, Luca? I think we had one.
Did we?
I reckon Deadpool and Wolverine.
That was a good turnout, actually. Yeah, a lot of people
That
were
was a great
cheering
turnout.
for that. Yeah, that's true. I think that's one of the only ones I think had a big, like that I thought had a big reaction. I mean, to be honest, like I'm kind of indifferent. I didn't go to the movies that much. I kind of waited for them all to come out. But I think Deadpool and Wolverine was definitely a shocker. Like in terms of like, I didn't realize people were that like kind of hyped about Marvel movies. You know, like there's still a bit of a train there, which is cool. So yeah.
Yeah, it felt like a real return to form, I thought, and that excitement that comes from Marvel. Yeah, we saw it opening night at IMAX, and that was pretty insane in terms of just like someone next to me just screaming at every sort of big moment within the film, and that was quite a fun experience. And I was sold on that film from the opening sort of title sequence. I thought that was great fun. So I think that there was a real buzz in the audience for that one. But I think you couldn't talk about 2024 without talking about a big film recently. And I think Tom Brady, I know you're a big fan of this one, but Wicked. I think
Yes,
that was a big film that I haven't had a chance to talk about on the show, but that just seems to have become a cultural phenomenon.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's been my favorite experience so far, both
Yeah.
working at the like opening nights and also going to the opening night. Just yeah, the crowd, like, because a lot of people who were going to the film, they know the story, they know the music, so it's like very rewarding. Yeah.
Absolutely. Lockie, what about you?
I was thinking maybe Challenges had really good
Yeah?
energy in the cinema.
yes.
Yeah, just I think with the music really like sucks everyone in and like kind of feels like you're at the club a little bit in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just been such an interesting year because we've sort of come out of the strikes, come out of COVID, and I think it does feel a little bit like cinema is coming back. Whilst there is clearly gaps and stuff with that, and we have seen some interesting box office results, I'd say some of the biggest surprise with me was something like Furiosa not performing very well. There's been a few others as well, but I think Challenges did good, but not incredibly well. There's just been some ones that have... The Fall Guys, another one I'm thinking of, that sort of just pandered along. Not a bad film, not necessarily the best film of the year, but it's something that I think is interesting, that those type of films that you'd expect to do incredibly well, you know, you got two incredibly popular lead stars, didn't necessarily bring people in to the theater. And I'm just curious what you guys think in terms of performance for some of the films that weren't these ginormous sort of blockbusters. What did you think about that sort of turnout?
Oh, I think maybe it's a bit of burnout. I think people are more interested in seeing newer things. I think the Fall Guy might be a bit of a different one, but I don't know. I think Furiosa, maybe it just doesn't like appeal to many people. Like I think Mad Max is definitely like a much older franchise. But I think with like challenges and stuff like that's more of a like a cult, like it's gonna become like a cult like film, and like Wicked as well. I think people are just more interested in seeing those kind of films than they are like a sequel like Furiosa and stuff like that. That's what I think.
Yeah. Right. That's interesting. Yeah. I don't disagree. I feel like it was the marketing campaigns of films this year has been so vital. And I think that's where we've seen Deadpool, Wolverine, Wicked. I'm even thinking of current films like Nosferatu and films like that I think are going to do really well
Yeah.
because they're just
Mm.
everywhere. You know what I mean? And they're all great films, but I think it really comes down to now people need a film that feels like something that is worth getting off the couch and going to the movie theater for, as cheesy as it is to say. But what I do love is we have seen some really great smaller releases, and I'm really excited for when we talk about our top 10s, because a lot of you had some really great smaller releases on there that it's great to put in the limelight, and I encourage people to go see. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you guys, what are sort of, it doesn't have to have anything to do with some of the best films you've seen this year, but
Yeah.
what do you think are some of the best moments you've seen in films this year? And I'd even be curious to see what you think about films that necessarily weren't in your top 10 that were not maybe not even the best received films, but just moments that really stood out to you.
Well, I like this wasn't in my top 10, as you said. Like it can be anything, but I think the risks that Joker 2 made, even though like now anyone who's seen it could agree maybe they didn't all pay off, I think it was very like interesting to see a director who had such a critically acclaimed first film sort of, just take such a leap of faith, and it didn't pay off in the sequel. But I did enjoy Joker 2, and yeah, so that was probably one of the best moments, I'd say, of cinema.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting.
To see someone go from such like a straightforward formula he could almost replicate for a sequel, and instead, Todd Phillips thought, no, I'm not going to replicate this. I'm going to make it into a musical that in the end most people didn't like.
Yeah. It does seem to have a little bit of a sort of a niche cult following in a way. I feel like it's one of those films that may come back a little bit more in the future.
I'd say that's possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lockie, what do you think? Best moment of 2024?
Don't know. What came to mind was Longlegs, actually, and like the
Oh,
lead up
yes.
to it, which wasn't a film that was in my list personally. But I think the build up to it was like quite interesting to see with like the trailer and like how people got really attached to it as like the scariest movie ever before it came out. And then obviously when it did come out, like people were like, it's not that scary. And then I guess was some disappointment with that. But I think it still like was quite interesting to see that personally.
Yeah. I had a very interesting experience watching Longlegs. That I think it's not in my top 10, but I think it could have scraped in there. But I had such a bad experience. I had like one of the loudest cinemas I've ever been in, talking the whole time and all that. And that's a film you need an atmosphere for, and that atmosphere just was not there. And I need to rewatch it. I've picked up the disc, and I'm keen to put that on at some point, because I feel like it would have been close. It could have scraped in there, because from what I remember and saw of it, I really enjoyed. Yeah,
especially the first half for me, like really strong.
Yeah, it's a strong opening. It really is. Yeah, I think for just some scenes or moments that stood out for me, this one probably will be spoken again later, but I have to admit, I think Luca and I spent a lot of time talking about it this year, and it's probably a film that's quite near and dear to our heart. But I think the worm riding sequence in June 2 is just a cinema experience I won't forget. Just seeing that and being with my friends and just looking at them, we were just like mouth open. I think that was a moment that was really special. And I just have to always shout that scene out, because I just think that is a remarkable piece of cinema. And that'll go down for me as a key moment of the year, seeing that. Absolutely.
It's pretty epic. Like a lot of that film is just like so grand, and like they do it in such like a picturesque way. So you just kind of like, oh wow, that's so like it's like painterly almost, like everything everything Denis did like in that film and Greg did. Like it's like a different kind of art form. Yeah, it looks so good on the big screen, like, especially IMAX.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I feel like genre films have been sort of interesting this year. And I think bring it back to Longlegs, like we were saying. Longlegs, I think, is just one example of really successful horror movies this year. So the ones that come to mind are something like Longlegs, The First Omen, Immaculate. I mean, you've just got Nosferatu that's just come out. I feel like horror has done extremely well. And whether that's, sort of body horror on the substance side of things as well, we've gone quite a range. What have you guys found about genre this year? And how have you sort of connected with different genres?
I feel like the best films this year, because I love genres like horror, but they've been the ones that have sort of blended multiple ones. Like I'd say The Substance, one of the best horror films of the year, especially like horror fans ate that up. It wasn't like an explicitly like straightforward horror film. And even something like Challenges, like it didn't fit into one genre, and I think that's why those films have been so excellent this year, because they don't fit into one specific category.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Tom there as well. With especially with like Anora, I found that a film to be like
Yes.
very genre shifting. All the films this year that did a really good job of it.
I don't know. I think a lot of films still stuck to, I guess, the genre types that they're kind of made for. Like Alien. Romulus was very like strictly very first Alien like.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think a lot of them just I think it's a new thing with these kind of new generation of films. Yeah, they're all kind of like genre bend, and they kind of include a lot of other things. And like what you said about The Substance is like, it's very true. It's not explicitly horror, but it like doesn't shy away from body horror. Yeah.
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 No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well, why don't we jump in to our top 10s of the year? What everyone has come and listened to this for. So, the way we're going to do this, just for listeners at home, we've all created a top 10 list, 10 to 1, and we're going to go through each person's list in a specific order. Once we get to a film that maybe someone's number 10, but someone else is, say, number 3, we're going to wait until we get to the film at the highest point in the list, whoever's that may be. So say Luca has The Substance at number 10, but Lockie has it at number 2. We wait until we get to Lockie at number 2 to speak about the film. So if we start skipping sort of numbers and stuff, that's why we're doing it, so that we only speak about the film once and we don't sort of ramble on about each film 4 times, for example.
Yes.
So that's how we're going to be doing it. How did you guys find creating your list?
Yeah, it was pretty simple, although even in the past like 15 minutes of being on this podcast, I've realized like, oh damn, I forgot Challenges on my list. I forgot, like I'm realizing I've forgotten a few films I loved. But yeah, I just sort of honestly went back through my letterbox, which is like what most people here use to log what they watch. And I was just looking, what did I watch? How did I rate it? What did I comment? And then I just sort of organized that.
Yeah, totally.
I found it quite hard. There was so many movies that could have made it that were just edging out. Like, I don't know, just a lot of honorable mentions, I guess. And a lot of movies that I didn't get to see that I really would have wanted to see, but just like didn't get to see, unfortunately.
No, I'm with you on that one. And I think that is something that I should mention, that we are going off the Australian release calendar, because there are a number of films that have come out already in the US that I've been really excited to see, that I think would have made my list if we were doing that, but unfortunately they haven't come out here. A few examples that I've heard are amazing are something like The Brutalist, and films like that I feel like a lot of people are really excited about, and that we are getting here in roughly January, I think. So unfortunately, films like that won't be making an appearance on our list, but we are going off the Australian release calendar. But yeah, I agree with you. There's a few films that we sort of missed out on. It's been a very busy year, and a lot of films sort of come together at this time as well. But yeah, Luca, how'd you find it?
I think, like, to be honest, I didn't have much time to see many movies that even came out this year. I think I spent a lot of my viewing time at home. So I didn't find it too difficult, in the sense like I already had like basically I watched 10 movies that came out this year. So like I really just organized those 10. But I think the top 3 were the hardest, I think. Just trying to shuffle those around, because I honestly could not tell. It's difficult because there were so many good ones. Of the 10 or roughly 10 that I watched, all 10 I just loved.
Well, we're actually going to start off with you, Luca. So
Sure.
if you want to tell us your top 10, 24.
The Fall Guy.
Nice. I like that
Yes.
film too. That's a good film.
Yeah,
Talk to me about it.
I really found it funny, and I think it's a good homage to like stuntmen, and I guess the people that you don't really like pay attention to when you watch a film. I don't know. I think I found it pretty funny. I know a lot of people didn't like it because it's like, it's like, oh, they play the same song like 5 times in the film, and the writing's bad and whatnot. But I think, you can sit down and have a good laugh with it. So yeah, that's why I enjoyed it. And I think, yeah, it pays a good tribute to the stuntmen that I guess go unrecognized a lot of the time.
I completely agree. There's some great moments in that film. The one I'm thinking of is when he gets spiked and they say it's something like you'll know when it ends when you stop seeing the unicorn, and then
Yeah.
the unicorn pops up in the background of all the shots that he's in. It just moments like that in the film just get me every time.
Yeah.
And it's got just such energy to that movie. Yeah, have you guys managed to go out and see that one, Tom and Lockie?
I have not, sadly.
Yeah, same
No.
here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a great film. Yeah, really good fun. I feel like it probably overstays its welcome a little too much at the end, Luca. I don't know about you, where you sort of know exactly where it's going.
Yeah.
But you're just entertained the whole time. It's a real family-friendly sort of laugh out loud comedy that puts a smile on most people's faces, which is a really good thing about it.
100%.
Yeah. So for our number 9, we're actually coming back round to Luca, because the number 10s for Tom, Lockie, and I will appear later on in the podcast. So Luca, you can now reveal your number 9 and sort of tell us about it.
All right, my number 9 was Inside Out 2.
Very nice.
Yes.
I like that.
I loved this one. I actually had such a good time watching it. I watched it in the theaters, and I think it felt very much like the first, but it felt like more was added on top of it. I think the first one might be a bit better in terms of story and I think like character dynamics, but I think the second one did a really good job adding on top of it and building onto the lore of the first one and just the story, like the story of Riley. And I think it's entertaining seeing that same character grow up and you're already familiar with her. So it kind of just builds upon the world that's already been established inside of her mind. And yeah, I think it's a very sweet movie. It pulled the emotional strings, I think, in everyone. And yeah, that's why I enjoyed it.
I agree. I feel like it's a film that got better on my second watch. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but when I saw it a second time, the first time I connected with it, but not quite as much. And the second time I found it really powerful. And I think that actually is reflected in its box office, being the highest grossing film of the year. It's a film that drew people back to the cinemas. And I don't even mean, just in general. I mean, again. And I know people who saw it multiple times. It's really something that has appealed to not just kids, but sort of everyone. And I think, like you were sort of saying, that story, the direction it goes in with the story of Riley. I mean, Inside Out, the first one came out in 2015. So sort of people that watched that as kids have grown up a bit since then.
Yeah.
And their experiences may sort of match that of Riley's. And so I think that has a lot to do with its appeal to not just sort of current kids and stuff like that, but sort of people our age and even a little younger who sort of want to see that film, that have sort of grown up since the first one came out.
100%. Agreed.
Yeah. Awesome. So we are now on to Tom Brady for your number 9.
My number 9?
Yes.
Oh, I'm surprised no one had this any higher, but I
was too,
rated
actually.
I rated All of Us Strangers number 9 with Paul Mescal and Andrew Scott. I thought it was a good film, but I was sort of swayed by early reviews that made it seem to be like the best queer film in a decade, and I sort of went into it with that mindset, and I think that led to me having like not the best reaction. I didn't leave being like blown away, and that's why it wasn't higher. But upon reflection, I did think it was a great film, beautifully made, beautifully told. It was very sad, but yeah, I feel like it was just a little bit overhyped in early reviews.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that's a film that is I think it is starting to find an audience again, especially
Yes.
since it's dropped on Disney Plus and stuff. But I feel like as Paul Mescal as well, starts to sort of grow as an actor and become sort of, you know, a household name, people are going back and watching All of Us Strangers, and it's really connecting with people. So that is a great pick. I was very impressed when I saw that on there. I didn't, because I sort of, in my head, that was very early in the year, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember when it came out, or at least it felt like it.
March maybe.
March, yeah, it
I
probably
think-
was March. And so I just sort of, it could have got close, but it just never quite. I could never find anything to sub out. So that was a really good pick. I'm glad it got. It was on the list. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, good. So now we are on to my my number 10, which is Lockie's number 9. So we can do this together, Lockie. But that is the one behind me, Furiosa: A Mad Max Saga. Talk to me about Lockie. Why is it in your top 10?
Honestly, just really entertaining, just all around. Like, I don't know, you follow this whole life journey of revenge, and it's just, I don't know, so satisfying. Almost everything about it felt satisfying to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think what really made it, because it was the one I had coming in and out of my top 10. And I think what
Same
made
here.
it stay is I realized it was so different to Fury Road in a way that I don't think is spoken about enough. That Fury Road is sort of, you know, one moment in time with you know, the war rig coming to and from, and this revenge story in it. This story is an odyssey taking place over, you know, basically someone's life. It's quite possibly as different in structure as you can get from Fury Road. And for George Miller to do that, pull it off, and I think the performances are really good in it. Anya Taylor-Joy is great, even though you sort of don't see her till quite late in the film. I just feel like that progression of the character really works, and that revenge story is really fun to watch. And it's a film that I think every time I rewatch, I sort of I sit in the middle of it where I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I think it's a brilliant film. But I sometimes I don't know about you, Lockie. I just wish the action had some of the moments that Fury Road did. And I've been meaning to mention this because every time I watch it, sometimes I go, it just doesn't have quite the kineticism of Fury Road. And I don't know if you could speak on that, but I
think
felt that
I
a little
did
bit.
feel that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did feel that. It's just like, I don't know, maybe I thought it was like unfair to compare it with Fury Road, I guess. Even though
Yeah.
it is a prequel, it's a very different film in the end. Like,
Fair enough. No, it deserved to be in the top 10. It was moving around, but I think George Miller did an incredible job with this film. And I can't wait for more and more people to sort of see it. I know a few people, like as we were talking about, the box office didn't necessarily reflect too well on it, but I think a lot of people are finding it at home, so hopefully they have a great time with it. Yeah. We are now on to Luca, your number 8, which is also my number 8. So we're doing this one together.
All right, let's do it. Our
Let's
number
do it.
8 is Deadpool and Wolverine. Yes.
Yes.
Brilliant
Which
film.
we saw together,
Yeah,
funnily enough.
We did see that together, yeah. Yeah, I think as a Marvel movie, it's very, very good. But I think as a movie itself, it's pretty meh. It's a bit mishmashy, and it's kind of, I don't know if you would agree, but it kind of goes everywhere, like a bit incohesively. And I think the thing that falls flat for me the most is the visuals. It's just not that striking to me, visually. So I think it makes it harder. This is just me, I think, but it makes it a lot harder to connect with the characters in that sense. And I think that's one thing I wish that they did differently, but I also wish that it was a little bit more simple than it was in the film, because it felt like so much was happening, and a story like that could have been a little bit better if it was less, I guess, dragged out, because it felt a bit dragged out with some of those characters.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. So what put it in your top 10 then?
I think just it being an homage to the X-Men, I guess, like that kind of universe, and the kind of the death of that universe. Like those are the movies that we kind of grew up with, I guess. Those kind of X-Men characters. So I think it was really nice seeing those characters one last time on screen. And obviously Hugh Jackman 100% returning. I think that was a great little thing that they did. And him and Ryan Reynolds have always had that kind of dynamic, but to finally see it on screen was, like, I think really fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think what makes this film so great beyond just the the incredible comedy that's in it. I mean, I was laughing the entire time, but I think it's really grounded in the performances. I think of some key scenes such as sort of Wolverine losing his shit at Deadpool in the car, and
Mm.
just those moments that you really see some great character work by Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. And I thought the film had a lot to offer beyond just sort of the gags and cameos. So I think it deserved to be in the top 10 for that reason. And it was just such a great cinema experience. It's a real crowd pleaser. It's a film you can put on and rewatch multiple times and still have a lot of fun with it. I liked what they did with the end of Logan and the way they sort of honored that, for if you can even call it that. But I thought it was a lot of fun and it was very Deadpool. And just ultimately the film brought a smile to my face. So it's probably, you know, maybe it's a mainstream pick, whatever, but it just is a film that I think captured not only us, but a lot of people, and it's reflected in the box office. And it's just a film that I think a lot of people would connect with as a really fun piece of cinema.
Yeah, I agree with you in that. It really stood out in those little moments, like what you said when Logan was arguing with Deadpool in the car, like that those little bits, those kind of like simpler character interactions, like really stood out versus the other things in the film. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's go to you, Tom, for your number 8.
Wow. Again, I'm surprised it's not higher on anyone else's list. But yeah, judging by we were talking about this film earlier, and I get maybe not everyone loved it, but I put Long Legs as my number 8. I think Lockie, you summed it up pretty well earlier. The hype beforehand about it being like the scariest film, that was very convincing. And honestly, I was pretty like content with how it fared compared to the promotion. I know some people were saying that it was overhyped, saying it was too scary, but I was pretty thrilled with it. I think it was good. Nicolas Cage was amazing in it. I liked that they kept the premise under wraps. Like they did a great job of, creating so much hype without actually saying what the hype was. And that worked on me. And I think it was just a good example of horror working this year.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's the one that probably was shifting into the top 10 and in and out as I was going through it. It
Yeah,
was probably just the way I watched it that took it down a notch. But I have to admit, Cage's performance is remarkable in that. And
amazing.
the way the film unravels, as sort of like you said before, especially at the start, it just grips you in this atmosphere that
Mm,
you're on the edge of your seat the entire time, and it's filled with such dread and sort of despair. It's a very dark film, but very engaging, and I totally get why it's on your top 10, and I was equally surprised that it wasn't in anyone else's. But I
yeah,
think it's been such a strong year for horror that it has sort of stood out from the crowd a little bit, but it's in a very busy year for horror films, so I wonder how it's going to
absolutely.
fare into the future. But Osgood Perkins has
Yes,
got another film coming out in early 2025, so we'll see what they can do with more horror.
yes.
So we now have Lockie, your number 8.
Cool. So I've got Memoir of a Snail. I don't know if anyone else saw that.
I didn't get a chance to see it. Did you see it at MIF?
No, I actually saw it last week at Nova, so
Cool, cool, cool.
very
Yeah,
recent.
yeah.
Yeah, just a really beautiful movie, to be honest. Everything about it, the animation's so gorgeous. Going into it, I heard that it was really sad, and while it was like a bit sad, I don't think I found it like devastating. Like it was kind of had a sweet tone to it, and like a happy tone, I would say, even though it's like a pretty sad story, I guess. But yeah, really solid film, and an Australian film too, which feels good to go and support.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the animation style, claymation, or am I making that up? What is sort of the animation style? Because it on the poster it looks very distinctive, and Bree was equally raving about the animation style. What is it? Is it claymation?
Yeah, yeah, I believe it is.
It
I'd
is,
say
right.
so. Yeah, claymation. Yeah,
Right. Oh,
yeah,
that's really
similar
cool.
to Mary and Max, if any of you guys have
Oh,
seen.
okay. Yeah, yeah. I've seen some stuff about that. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Oh, that's awesome. So that's I would say the film I was the most surprised to see But also, then I sort of did some research on it, and I was like, I'm completely wrong. I just don't know how mainstream this film is because it's getting very great reviews. You're not the only one. But it looks to be a very interesting film that I'm gonna definitely try and watch when I can. Was it part of the 3 you watched in one day, or something
No,
like
it
that?
wasn't. Yeah,
Wasn't.
but I was having a binge for the podcast, so
Yeah,
that
nice,
was quite good.
nice. I was doing the same, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All good. So we're actually back round to me for my number 9, which is a film that I saw at a preview screening the other day. That I wonder if it's going to really sort of have an effect here. But it was Conclave. Don't know if anyone's sort of seen this one being mentioned, but it's Ralph Fiennes, and it's about the process of electing a new pope. And it's sort of, all the ministers come together and they have to vote for a new pope, and it's this sort of cat and mouse, spread rumors, find your alliances and your allegiances and try to get a pope that sort of aligns with you and your views. And the film sort of follows Ralph Fiennes' character, and he's sort of trying to mediate all of this. And it's a very engaging film with a very cool soundtrack that's sort of a lot of fun. It knows its own ridiculousness, but is still played very straight. And I think that's where the film stands out to me. It's directed by Edward Berger, and he directed All Quiet on the Western Front on Netflix, if anyone saw that film.
Mm.
And it's a film that knows what it's doing and doesn't take itself too seriously whilst being very serious, is the only way I can describe it. It has this very strong violin score that just sort of, jabs in and out. There's this character in the film that sort of just comes and drops bombshells and then disappears. And I just love the way it's done, that it's this real thriller that just has so much fun with the concept of, like, these people have to elect the new pope. What are they going to do with it? And you just you start to find your own allegiances, and then suddenly you learn something about this person, then you switch views, and the film takes you in some really fun directions with it. If I had any sort of criticism, I'd say it, at a certain point, it comes in and drops too many bombshells. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of at the stage you're like, yeah, now it's sort of drama for the sake of drama, but it's still a really great watch. One that I can't wait people to see when it comes out, and a great performance by Ralph Fiennes. So that would be absolutely my number 9. We are back around
Nice.
to you, Luca, for your number 7.
My number 7 was Gladiator 2, which I actually enjoyed more than I thought I would. I think for me, I read the reviews of it and saw people saying it was a bit of a mishmash at the first, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually really enjoyed the gore and just the action, and I think it didn't really hold back in that sense. And I like how they continued to Lucius or Paul Mescal's role in the second one. I feel like the first one kind of had a lot more energy because of Russell Crowe's kind of like involvement in the film. Obviously when that film came out, but I think Paul Mescal is it's a pretty big figure now. So that kind of attracted audiences. It definitely attracted me. And I think he killed it in the role. I think he really conveyed it with such like an intense manner and sold that kind of like demeanor. So I think I really enjoyed watching it actually, yeah, for that reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thoroughly entertaining movie. I can't lie. I think it was one of those films that I thoroughly enjoyed in the theater and sort of came out and rewatched the first after.
Mm.
And I think in a way, I literally went on Letterboxd and took my score down a little bit because I did feel that it was too close to the original to justify. I don't want to say it's existence because I had a great time with it, and my whole family did. I went with my whole family, but I had issues with the fact that it was so similar to the first. I just
Yeah.
felt like there was so much potential in that world to go in a different direction. But what they give you is just so well done. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's very
From the naval battle sequence to the fight between him and Pedro, just great moments, aren't there?
yeah, it's very grand, like in scale. I think that like they portray Rome of like give or take how accurate it is, but it's like it shows off how grand, I guess, the Romans were in that period of time. Obviously, not very historically accurate. Like you were saying, like the gladiator fights in the Colosseum, like it just like it kind of doesn't shy away from it, I guess. Like it just shows every single little like nitty gritty part of the Roman like empire. Yeah.
I think you couldn't talk about that film without mentioning Denzel, because I
Yeah.
think he just
Yeah, I was going to
steals
say
the show
that.
and runs away with it.
Such a standout.
Yeah, he's brilliant, isn't he? Honestly, he's still in talks for best supporting. He's apparently in the running,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
I do feel like we got to see how the rest of this, the start of this year pans out before we get to that. But I have to admit, I don't hate that. I think that absolutely works because he just has so much fun with the role, and he brings a lot of energy to the film. I thought beyond just the very kinetic filmmaking from Ridley Scott, I do feel that Denzel was the best difference between the first and the second film. That character was so fun to watch on screen, and just seeing his rise to power was, I actually think, more interesting than the revenge plot of Paul Mescal's character for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Same here.
It's written better, and it's much more complex than Paul Mescal's character.
Yeah, it's a very interesting film where I think a lot of people have had fun with it, but critics are sort of up in arms, and I get both sides, to be honest. We're actually skipping you, Tom. Your film comes
Oh.
up later on, but we are on to
Okay.
your number 7, Lockie. I'm very jealous that you got to see this film because I feel like this is going to be in a lot of people's top 10 of this year. I'm very jealous you got to see this film because, yeah, the Australian releases are a little delayed. But talk to us about your experience with this film.
Yeah, so I saw this yesterday, so very fresh on it still. Number 7 was Nosferatu, which I saw yesterday, so still very fresh on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was in love with this film, to be honest. So like clean and so many beautiful shots. Um, I will say it's pretty classic retelling of like the story. I think he does have an interesting take on it, which is quite fresh. But yeah, overall, just really solid movie.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of great things about it, that it goes into that it's a very interesting sort of relationship film, isn't it? It's sort of a love story, isn't it? And I'm very curious to see how that plays out on screen, and finally get a look at Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok, because I love how we haven't had one look at him, and so I'm very curious to see what
Yeah,
that looks like.
he was quite good in that role. I felt like he sold it quite well because I don't think it is super scary. And I didn't think it was going to be a horror going into it, but it does have the horror elements, and they do work. But I would say it's stronger in more of its like narrative aspect than the scares.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to watch it. Very excited to watch it. I'm sure a lot of other people are too. It's gonna have a big release here when it. I think it's either come out or it's. I think it has come out a couple of days ago actually. But I didn't have a chance to see it. But I'm very excited to watch that one. So great pick. We're on to my number 7 now, which is a film that's sort of near and dear to my heart based on my last interview, but it is Heretic. A very, very good A24 horror movie, if you can call it that. It's more of a thriller, but it's a very engaging watch with a tremendous performance by Hugh Grant. It just works on so many levels as a horror film. If you want to watch it that way, it's kind of got that creepy vibe, but it's also a really well written drama. The film, for people who don't know about it, but it's these 2 Mormon girls go to it to try and get this character of Mr. Reed, played by Hugh Grant, to come and join their church, and they go in, and I'll leave it at that. You don't really want to know any more going into it, but I have to say that the things that take place, it's so twisty and engaging, and it's performed so well by all the cast involved. A sort of smaller film that is just held up by a great script. So I have to say, Heretic well and truly deserves to be in the top 10, and I'm really glad to put it number 7. Yeah.
Yes.
So Luca, unfortunately, we're skipping you for you, Tom. And I'm glad that this made someone's list, to be honest.
Are we on to number 6?
Number 6.
My number
Yeah.
6. my number six is Wicked, which I did see 4 times in cinema in the space of 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah, as I said before, I love this film. I loved the musical. I've seen the musical a couple of times in Melbourne and on Broadway. And yeah, I think honestly, everyone who was skeptical, even I saw it for the first time with my mom, who isn't the biggest Ariana Grande fan, and she was walking in like, "Oh, I don't want to watch this. Like Ariana Grande could never play Glinda," and she walked out so convinced. I feel like the beauty of Wicked is even if people aren't the biggest musical fans, like everyone walked out acknowledging some aspect of it, whether it was the music, the costumes, the acting. There was something for everyone, and it was just so much fun. Yeah, so it was number
It's
six.
a very fun film. And I think what I
Yes.
liked about it, which was my biggest worry, was it as a part one, it wasn't going to feel complete. Do you know what I mean? I
Mm,
sort of I call it the Across the Spider-Verse effect now because that film still bothers me with how it ends, which I'm not saying it's a bad film, it's a terrific film, but that does bother me
yes.
that it just ends at a point where there's no satisfactory conclusion. I
Yes.
liked with Wicked that the characters end in a place where you can see there's more to come, but it is a complete arc and it is so engaging and you're excited to get to that end point and it leaves you on a cliffhanger but also in a place where the characters are different to how they started and you can believe it. Do you know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
I have
like
to
we
admit I
can't.
think that was great.
Yeah, we can wait a year for it. It's not like we're left high and dry, and it's anticlimactic. It's sort of a good space to leave it, which is yeah, as you
Absolutely.
said. Yeah.
Yeah. Luca, have you had a chance to see that one?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it's a very well done film. I have to be honest. It's not a film that necessarily captured me like it seems to have with everyone else. It's above average film and terrifically made. But I do think as more and more people see it because it is still out in theaters and still climbing up the box office.
Mm.
Its influence on this year, and it was not one I predicted to do as well as it did. I obviously knew about the following,
Mm,
but it has gone wild and I love that for it.
crazy.
It's great to see a film like
Yeah.
this doing so well that is appealing to so many different types of people and I love that. It's great to see a film doing that.
Mm.
We are now skipping Lockie, me and Luca for
Oh,
your number 5, Tom.
okay. I wasn't expecting this to be on anyone else's list. But I chose May December, which is a wonderful film starring Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore. And I found out like going into it that it's actually based on a true story about this woman who fell in love with a student. However, they sort of changed details of it, so it wouldn't exactly copy the real life story. But it's sort of set 20 years after this controversial age gap romance, and Natalie Portman is playing an actress in the film who is trying to meet Julianne Moore's character and find out more about her so she can play her correctly. And yeah, it's a really interesting film because you see that although they're pretending to be this happy couple, the younger husband, who's played by Charles Melton, an amazing actor, you see he's traumatized. Like I think he fell in love with her at the age of 14 or 15, something like that. And it was a really interesting watch.
Yeah. I've heard terrific
Yeah,
things about that one. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was very good, and I won't spoil the ending, but I think the ending was definitely one of the most fascinating ways to end a film like that I'd seen because the film isn't doing like the craziest things. Has anyone else seen it? Lockie or Luca? Have you?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, would you agree? Like the ending really surprised me after all is said and done with the women. Yeah,
Yeah.
surprised me.
Yeah, I suppose that's a really interesting commentary on like acting as well and like
Yes.
the sort of
Yeah.
craft of acting real people.
Yes. I'm glad you liked it as well. It obviously wasn't on your top 10, but you
Yeah, I
still
actually
liked
forgot
it,
about it.
obviously. Yeah.
I think I thought it was
Fair
last
enough. Yeah.
year, but yeah.
Yeah, true.
It was from memory it was sort of a film that came out mid to late last year in the other parts of the world and we got it quite late here. And it got quite a small limited release as well. But then it
Yeah,
sort of
very short.
yeah, it was short. So that's a great pick. It's one that I have been meaning to watch for a while now. I'm not gonna lie. It was even when I was looking at sort of the Oscars last year, I was very much trying to catch that one, and I think we didn't have it yet. I think that's why I didn't get a chance to see it. And now that's finally got a release. Hopefully, more people have a chance to see it here. But I'm glad it
Yeah,
was on
hopefully.
your list. Yeah. So now we actually come back. So we have Lockie, you and I for number 4. We're the same. So do you want to talk about this one?
Our number 4 is Challenges. It's kind of like an erotic thriller, I guess, or I
Mm.
don't know if that's the best way to describe it. Yeah, it's a tennis movie, I guess. Just really entertaining film though. Like some of the shots, I didn't think tennis could be that entertaining, to be honest.
Yeah.
Really, really solid movie.
It's a fantastic movie. I have to admit, I thoroughly enjoy this one. It's the score to the performance to just the power dynamic. I just love watching it play out on screen, and then it culminates in this thrilling tennis match at the end to Trent and Atticus Ross's incredible score, and Luca just injects so much life with it, and I love that every time it cuts back to sort of the current timeline tennis match. There's just so many different variety of shots played. I love it when it goes to the drone POV. I love it when it sort of plays with their POV and then sweeping crane shots, and it just captures a tennis match in such an engaging way that I haven't seen in a sports movie for quite some time. So Challenges deserves to be up there. It's I think genuinely, one of the best films of the year and one I've gone back to multiple times. Terrific performances all round, but Zendaya, of course, huge standout. And, Luca's had a terrific year. This, and then he's also had Queer come out as well. Honestly, Challenge is a great film. I know it was on your list as well, Luca, in your number 6 spot.
It was number 6, yeah. Well, I think I resonate more, like, mostly with what Lockie said. Like, some of those shots were just, like, insane. And it's pretty unique. Like, it's like, how do you even think of that, I guess? Like, the shots underneath the court. And I think the tension, I think you kind of feel the tension throughout the film. And it's very, very erotic, like what you said, Lockie. Like, it's pretty overtly erotic. And it's just interesting that they decided to do that through the game of tennis. Yeah. Very strange, but it works very well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great film. I was not surprised to see it on there. For our list, I'm not gonna lie. And I'm sure, yeah, I've seen it, across a lot of podcasts and shows that Challenges is getting a lot of attention. So I wonder how it will do in the awards race. To be honest, I honestly don't know how it. I don't see Zendaya or anyone sort of getting in, or even being in discussion. But I do wonder how
Score?
the film's
The
going.
score?
Oh, it
Definitely
has to.
Score should be up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now that
I
June
reckon
2's
editing
been
as well.
editing could, yeah. Because I think Score's a good one because I think June 2's been. It's not. It can't be in contention due to being sort of similar to June 1 or some. There's some kind of rules in the Academy about that. So, because I think that would absolutely be up there as well. But I think Challenges is got to be in there for the score. What Trent and Atticus Ross did for that is amazing. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that film.
Yeah.
So we're now on to Luca, your number 4.
Okay, my number 4 was Perfect Days. So I really actually enjoyed this. I thought I wouldn't, but I think I really enjoyed the simplicity of the film. It follows just one guy through his job in Japan cleaning toilets, but I think a lot of it is kind of I guess that the film centers around, making the most of like little things in life and paying attention to those little things. It's like, oh, you go like, oh, that's cute. Oh, that's funny. Like little kind of events that happens in this guy's life, but it's not necessarily got an overarching plot surrounding the character. But I guess it feels very wholesome. And another thing that sticks out with me is the visuals. I think I kind of pay attention to that a lot. Obviously, the film centers around these kind of like designer toilets in Tokyo, and they're all very, very unique. But I think that's also kind of a very like poignant part of the film is those toilets, which is really random, but like they're very beautiful toilets in Tokyo. But you kind of look at them, you're like, oh wow, that's so cool, and he kind of goes in and out of the toilets and cleaning them, and you see all like the kind of nook and crannies of the toilet, and it's like it's really random, but it makes you appreciate like the little things in life, and that sometimes you need films that are kind of simple like that. So that's why I think I rated it so highly.
Yeah, I love that. I know it was on your list too, Lockie. You're number 5. Do you agree? I have heard such terrific things about the film. I haven't actually finished it yet, but speak on that one, Lockie.
Yeah, such a great thing. Such a great movie. Yeah, going off what Luca said, the like little moments are just really beautiful in it, I think. I think I love like he plays a noughts and crosses game with like a
Mm.
stranger, and like he doesn't know who it is, and they keep leaving notes for each other, and like little things like that. Just I don't know, it's a very heartwarming movie, um, and makes you appreciate the little things. Like I think that has a focus on like the light through trees, and then like the shadow that makes, and it's
Yeah.
shot like so beautifully that it like makes you think about it a lot, and like how many little things there are in our lives that we just like see like that every day. I don't know,
Yeah,
really beautiful film.
it's like this. He just walks. He does the same thing every day, but he kind of enjoys it, like as if he's just doing it all over again. Like he's forgotten that he's done it. So I think that's really interesting. And like yeah, like what you said, is it's just these like the little things that he does. And it's like the noughts and crosses game. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I love that. That's terrific. Great pick. Great pick. Tom, we're on to your number 4, which I really love this film as well. So excited to see this one.
Yeah, thank you. My number 4 is Anatomy of a Fall, which was sort of part French, part German, part English, which I found very interesting. And that is a major part of the film. From memory, it's set in France. However, Sandra Huller, the protagonist, is from Germany, and she sort of resents this French lifestyle her husband dragged her into. So she speaks English for a lot of the time, which I think was to its benefit in terms of critical acclaim, that it was like this multilingual film. I just thought it was fantastic. Sandra Huller, like her performance was amazing throughout the whole film. She sort of put on trial to both the court and the audience, but it climaxes in this scene where a recording is played in court of her, supposedly showing that she's has anger issues, and it was just phenomenal. That was definitely one of my favorite scenes like that I've seen the whole year. To show her like reaching that level of acting in a performance, I think was fantastic. And I'm definitely happy with who won Best Actress at the Oscars. I think we'll get to that film later, but I really was rooting for Sandra Huller as well. Has anyone else seen Anatomy of a Fall? You have, Will?
Yeah, yeah, I have.
Yeah,
Terrific film. Couldn't agree more. Best dog
yeah.
performance I've seen probably
Oh,
ever
yeah,
as
the
well.
dog.
True, so
Yep.
true.
Got to admit, like you're right. It's a film that's held up by its performances, and that scene that you're mentioning as well with the recording being played
Yeah,
is gripping. And it's one of those things that on paper it probably doesn't seem like it would be. You know what I mean? But it's performed in
yeah,
such a way, and
yeah,
the courtroom scenes are so engaging, and I think it's held up by this family dynamic and these performances that are just so compelling to watch. And I think that's where the film just is elevated so much that it could have. I don't want to say it could have been fairly basic, but it's just so well written
no,
and
yeah,
it's
you're
held up
right.
by great characters. And I think you're right that the multilingual aspects are so interesting as well, and just beautifully shot. I mean that sort of house in the snow.
Yeah, a beautiful setting. Um, and I saw it with friends who were quite underwhelmed, by the ending. But I think what plays to its strength is that it's sort of not about who's guilty, who's innocent. And I think the friends I saw it with were expecting this like finite ending. This is what happened. But when you think about it, like it's not. It's about putting like a family dynamic on trial, which you can't do. Like the justice system doesn't fit to a family dynamic. It fits to the law. And this wasn't about, like, the film's not about the law, it's about tempers and dynamics and stuff. And I think that was so interesting that the film doesn't want to give you an answer of what happened. It can tell you what the court thinks, but it won't tell you. Am I right in saying that? Yeah, I don't think the film ever shows you what happened, quote unquote. Yeah.
No, Yeah, it stays quite
Yeah,
vague in that way, but you're right. It's more about the impact on the people than necessarily the impact
yes,
legally, and
which
that's
I
that's
loved.
it's a great direction that it takes with it, and it makes it feel very distinct, which I think is why it got the attention it undoubtedly deserved. Yeah.
Yes, nice.
So we are now on to we are actually back round to you again, Tom, for your number
Oh,
3. Yep.
yeah.
As we go from there, we start to sort of have some similar ones, everyone. But we're on to you for your top 3. So your number 3.
My number 3. This was one that, like, it was hard to place because while I loved the film, is it necessarily better than films like Wicked and Anatomy of a Fall? Like I've listed these films that are getting critical acclaim, maybe. But my number 3 is called Sunflower. It's an Australian queer film that was actually filmed in Melbourne, and I think the reason I placed it so high was because it was beautifully told. It was the director's personal story, and I think for it to be such like a Melbourne centric Australian queer film, I think it's just so important that it actually got a cinema release. Like cinema I work at, like yes, it is a big cinema, but it doesn't get every single film. Like even like Saw 10, which came out started last year, we didn't get that, for example. So I was really shocked that that this film like came out in cinemas. And so I loved it. Yeah. Has anyone else seen it?
Haven't even heard of it, I'm afraid.
No.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
one was
same.
Yeah.
a surprise for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't expect many people to hear about it. It's called Sunflower. I honestly mainly heard about it because quite a few people were coming into the cinema, and when people would say like, "When's this film playing?" They'd say to me like, "When's Sunflower?" And I'm like, "I don't think we're getting that." And then we got it in Pride Month in the middle of the year in 2024, and it only played for like a couple of Friday and Saturday nights, and it was just lovely. So yeah, it's like this director's sort of own experience of being in high school. I think it was set in Frankston, so you can sort of imagine like the sort of people he's dealing with at high school. And again, like yes, it's very cliche. Like, is it the most original story? Like, is it headed to the Oscars? No, but I think sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you want a film that isn't like trying to break the box office, trying to get the 5-star reviews. Like it was just it felt very authentic and it felt very raw. Like I love watching a film when you can tell that if it was made in Hollywood, it wouldn't have all of the elements. Like it was very like genuine. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's
So
great to see a
yeah.
film like that on there. Something that is sort of new to all of us, and I'll definitely have to go check
Yes,
that one out. That's a good one.
absolutely. Thank you.
So we're back. Well, we're at. So we'll go to your number 2, Tom, but that's because it's actually on everyone's list. This film, but it's the highest on your list. So we'll finally talk about the
Yep.
film that I think all of us have been waiting to talk about, but that is The Substance. So for
Yes.
context, it is your number 2. It is my number 3. It is Lockie at your number 6 and Luca at your number 5.
Mm.
So let's talk about The Substance. I think this caught all of us off guard. Am I right in saying that? I don't know about you. I did not expect to go into this film.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
this film just has so much energy to it. It's such a unique film. I don't think I've seen a film quite like this. A really fun sort of logline plot, and just you're enticed from the first second you realize what's going on with this substance, and it's so outrageous, so fun, and so sort of horrifying, but not in that sort of filled with dread way, in just this sort of reaction to the craziness that goes on screen. I think it's held so high with Demi Moore's performance, and Margaret Qualley is equally as great, and you believe them as the same person. So well directed, so engaging. Dennis Quaid playing such a hilariously outlandish character. Sound design is perfect. It's well filmed, and I love the ending as well, as outrageous as it gets. So I'll pass on to you guys. Talk to me about The Substance.
I think it did a really good job at making both like the female characters feel separate but the same at the exact same time. Like when they're both complaining about what each other are doing, like when they're in their own bodies, like I guess the two separate bodies, but even though they're one person, I think that's something really unique, and I don't think I've seen before in a film. So I that's one aspect I really, really liked about it.
Yeah. Tom, what do you
Yeah,
think? It's your number 2, yeah.
Yeah, my number two, and honestly, if I could have tied it with number one, I would have. Because I just loved the substance, and like what Luca was saying, the dynamic between the two women. I saw someone online saying it's almost like when we're young, and if you go out partying and eat heaps and you have a good metabolism, you are sort of stealing from your older self who could get health issues. And I feel like the substance takes these like real life analogies into this like, oh my gosh, you're gonna turn into monster Eliza Sue. Like it obviously takes it into a dramatic way, but it is very real. That's what I
Mm,
loved. It's like it's
yeah.
based in people's actual fears of vanity and stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you're right. You've hit on something there that I think it's the message beneath it all, just the way we look at people in Hollywood and specifically women in Hollywood and the value we place on looks. And beyond that, just how like the perception of how people feel about their own looks and how we feel people look at each other and that and all that sort of stuff is so well thought out in the film, and it presented in this hilariously crazy way
Yes. Very
that makes it
cam.
super
Yeah.
entertaining, but you understand the root of it and you believe it because we all sort of have we can feel Demi Moore's character and we can understand that, that is how people are treated, and that's how people feel about themselves and how people do treat others in that way. And so it
What's
kind of feels grounded when it's not. You know what I mean?
What, yeah, what's interesting is that Demi Moore in real life has faced that sort of ageism, and she's, like a couple of years ago when she was seen after COVID with this new facelift, people were saying she looks horrible, she looks on her deathbed, like, and I think it's very interesting that now she's, had that dissolved and she's back to her natural beauty, that she played a role who's facing ageism. Like, it's very interesting she took that on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a terrific
Mm,
performance, and I think she deserves to be seen in sort of the best actress race. I think
absolutely.
and I think the film actually deserves to be in a lot of categories. Sound specifically, I think was terrific in that film. But I have to admit, Coralie Fargo, I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, did a terrific job directing this film. Sort of an up and coming, newer director that just knocks it out the park with something that's so different, so stylish, but with really core, deep themes that run throughout. My family saw it, I saw it, a lot of my friends have seen it, and everyone sort of says the same thing, that it's a standout film of the year.
Yeah, no, I agree with absolutely everything. I think I want to say like how well it sticks to aesthetics. Like it sort of has this aesthetic that it sets up right at the beginning, and then it just follows through with it the whole way through. Um, yeah, I think I loved how much it like committed to that.
Absolutely. I think it has some of my favorite just key moments or scenes of the year in it. Like I the one I'm thinking of is like the Hollywood star at the beginning and sort of how you
Mm.
see it
Mm.
get made and then erode over time and people just sort of walk all over it and that kind of stuff and how that comes back at the end. I think is so great. I love the opening with just the substance being injected into the two eggs that split
Mhm.
and just
Yeah.
so many great visuals in that film that really I saw it at MIF before anyone sort of at the festival when no one sort of knew about what this film was. And the reactions in the cinema were just, I wish I could have recorded it on my phone. It was just so funny. People were walking out, puking, all of that stuff, but in the most hilarious way that everyone was still enjoying it, even though it was grossing everyone out. It was just a film that really connected with people in that audience. So, I was so glad to see that.
Absolutely.
Lockie, we're on to you for your number 2.
So I had La Chimera as my number two. Has anyone else seen this film?
I haven't seen this one, no.
Is this the one with Selena Gomez?
No, it's got I can't remember his name, but
It's from
the
Challenges, right?
Patrick in Challenges, yeah,
Yeah.
he's in this,
Oh.
and he's the main actor.
Yeah, I'll find out.
Yeah, it's kind of like this
Josh
treasure
O'Connor.
hunting. Yeah, Josh O'Connor, that's it. But yeah, it's this treasure hunting film. Um, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like this. He's sort of like this melancholic main character who's sort of like he has a missing girlfriend that you sort of hear about, and he's hanging around with these guys who are like treasure hunting and opening these tombs in Italy, and they're sort of like on the run from the police and trying to make money this way. Um, yeah, I don't know, just a really beautiful film. It's shot on film, I think 16 mil actually. And yeah, just everything about it just like blew me away and completely sucked me in. I actually watched it over a few days, which I want to watch it in one sitting, but I don't know, it just felt like I could have kept watching it like after I finished it. Like there was so many little details that I just want to like sit with and want to know more about, I guess.
Yeah, nice. It's a film Bree's a big fan of too, actually. And I can't wait to watch it. I feel like it sort of had a small release.
Mm.
You know, a tough one to track down, but one that people should go and try and get nonetheless. Great pick. Luca, we're on to your number 2, which appears on multiple people's lists as well. So you want to start off with that one?
Yes, my number 2 was Alien Romulus, which I really
Yes.
I really liked it. Yeah, I think I just like the aesthetic of those films, and like just it felt raw, like it felt gritty and it felt grounded, and that's what I love, and I love that about the franchise. But I feel like this was such a good like modern take on the alien idea. I don't like how I guess they did it in Covenant and stuff. It felt more like that was an action film, but I love the return to like kind of the original idea of Alien. It felt so much like the first in the sense like that it feels like the alien is just lingering, I guess, at all points. It felt like it's tension, I guess. I think that's the right word, is tension. Like the film held so much tension. And I know that when I watched it, I was like gripping to my seat, just like because anything can happen at any time. So I think that's just why I loved it so much. I think it's the return to classic Alien, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, it's my number 5.
Mm.
Tom, it's your number 7. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it slots so well between Alien and Aliens. It keeps
Mm.
that sort of quite analog feel to it. The practicality of the film is a standout. The variety of different scenes and set pieces are incredible, even just from that red splashed face hugger scene as we sort of get into the action is amazing. I love I know a lot of people don't, but I really love the sort of fourth act of the film too at the
Yeah.
end, and how the story continues to roll. And it's just a truly effective sci-fi horror, which is, you know, one of my favorite genres. And it just works really well. Fede Alvarez is meticulous in terms of how he keeps tension. He places a lot of interest in characters that I find work. And I have to admit, I got to admit, I forgot the character's name. Is escaping me, but the person that plays the sort of robot or the AI
Oh,
in
yes.
the
Yeah.
film is David Johnson. That's it. David Johnson is a truly terrific actor that is given so much screen time because he deserves it, because he just steals the show with everything with every scene he's in. So Alien Romulus is a terrific film, and I couldn't agree more with everything you were saying, Luca. It has a great vibe to it. It's a fantastic horror film. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of you. I'm surprised to hear, Will, that you think not many people love the sort of final segment. I loved that. I sort of thought that was when it was starting to get great. Like maybe that's the Prometheus in me. Like when I love when, you know, it just all goes crazy, like 100 out of 10. But yeah, that final segment sort of proved, yeah, like the whole it sort of all, you know, became worth it. And I'm not the biggest fan of sci-fi horror actually, which is kind of funny because I love The Substance and Alien, but yeah, I don't really like you know, supernatural stuff. Except I love the Alien franchise. I feel like that's a big exception, and this film is the same, where it's just, yeah, the perfect balance of horror and supernatural.
I think there's some moments that I think didn't quite work for me. One of them being you know, the to try and avoid spoilers, but the callback to the original with a certain character that I thought could have. It probably wasn't 100% necessary, but used briefly enough that it didn't distract from the film. But yeah, most of that film, it's a 9 out of 10 film. It works incredibly well. So yeah, absolutely
I'd
deserving
agree.
to be near the top of the list. We're down to it. Tom, we are at your number 1.
My number 1. Is this on anyone else's list? I'm sure it would be.
It's not, actually. Again, because it's
Wow.
part of my sort of list closer to the end of last year, because I saw it quite early. Yeah. So I managed to see it in December last year.
I'm sure in spirit it's on people's lists, but
Yeah, it would
I
be.
did actually look up the release date, and it says in Australia it was mid-January 2024, I believe. So that's where I counted it. But my number 1 by far was Poor Things. I went into this film, hearing the hype and stuff. I just went with one friend, and I remember like almost having an emotional reaction to it. Like, not because it's a sad film necessarily, but like I couldn't believe like there were elements of comedy jumping out at me, and this like alternative. It was just the craziest genre blend. It's like when you eat a dish and you just can't believe the flavors. Like, that's how I felt watching Poor Things. And then when I started to realize that not everyone loved it, there is controversy with this film and controversy with Yorgos for sort of the themes of the film. I did sort of look into it, and I was like, why do I love this so much? Like, and I can see both sides, because now I do see why it is a bit controversial. But I'm on the viewpoint that I think what I'm referring to, if you guys don't know what I mean, is like how Emma Stone is playing this like infant, like an infantilized character. But my perspective is that that's the point of the film. It sort of adds to the film that she's being exploited, whereas people think the director is exploiting that. If that makes sense, yeah. So I loved it. What does everyone else think?
I think it's a terrific film as well. Really, really good. It's probably the one I've always respected Yorgos, but I haven't necessarily connected with his films. But this film I actually connected with, and I found it to be the most compelling lead character he's had in one of his films.
Absolutely.
I find that the development of her character says so much, and it's done in such a visual way that it's not necessarily spoon-fed to you. It's done in a creative, quirky way that I love. I really find Mark Ruffalo very entertaining in the film as well. Such an interesting character to watch. And you're right, I think it's just, it couldn't have worked in the hands of any other director. And it probably wouldn't have worked as well without Emma Stone in it. It is that good of a
Absolutely.
performance that, as she sort of said in an interview, she had to keep track of between shooting days where in the development of her, like where she was in terms of mental age and that sort of thing, and development, and to keep track of that, and to add so much within that, to have to go and play, an infant, like that's a remarkable performance is what I'm trying to say essentially. And I agree with you. I totally get why it's on there.
Deserving. Yeah.
Yes.
She
100.
deserved the Oscar. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, there was no doubt. It was a tremendous performance. And yeah, I'm really glad it also did very well from sort of the technical aspects of the film too, with the way it was filmed, but also just the costume design, the set design.
Oh,
It's a film
amazing.
that has such a distinctive look that you probably won't see in a film again. Like, it's so unique. You can't even describe how it is, but it just is. It's strangely feels like a set, but it works. It's sort of it's from the mind of her character, and it works on all levels. Even the black and white sequences with Willem Dafoe, that sort of stuff as well. Just, it has so much style to it, and it's a great film. Yeah. Good pick. So now we are on to Lockie, your number 1, which is on other people's lists, I should say, as well.
Yeah, so my number 1 was Anora. Yeah, I saw this yesterday, so maybe a little bit of recency bias. I just love this film. I don't know, I think I loved all the different genres it sort of flipped through. It's incredibly funny film. Yeah, I just love the performances. really loved the ending. I think that's sort of what sold me on it the most was the ending. Was a big fan of that, and especially the second half of the film. I think the first half like is good setup for sort of the characters, but once it sort of turns into like a continuous night and day in the second half is like where it really stands out for me. It's just like yeah, such a like tense but funny like sequence of events. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I should say so. It's Honora is my number 6. I believe Tom, it is your. Oh, it's not on your list. Sorry. Oh no, it is. Sorry, it's your
It's on
number
my
10.
10.
Yep, it's your number 10. So yeah, my number 6, your number 10, and Lockie's number 1. Terrific film. I completely agree. I think Mikey Madison's terrific in the lead role. I love the scene in the middle of the house where the whole film sort of turns on a 180 as her life does as well. Just that scene with her just with them just screaming at each other, and this sort of humorously tense scene when you see her life get sort of turned upside down. Really fun concept for a film as well. Yeah, really well made. Just it's a film that perfectly nails the tone it's trying to convey. And I think that's where it works. Is it's funny but tense at the same time. Yeah, just so many great performances all around. Terrifically directed. I think we're definitely going to be talking about this one again as we get closer to the Oscars race. Um, Especially in the lead actress category. It's a very great film, and I recommend people. It's available in theaters now in Australia, and it's a film I'm a big fan of. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was very excited for it. I did leave the cinema sort of underwhelmed. But it has grown on me, if that makes sense. It's interesting what you said, because I'd sort of disagree entirely. I resonated a lot more with the first half, and then I found the second half of the film to be a bit too much like Good Time by the Safdie brothers. If anyone's seen that, this sort of like cat and mouse trying to find the boyfriend in the film, and I feel like that sort of lost me because I was loving the first half too much. The ending did draw me back in, but then I really didn't love everyone in the. I saw it at a packed Lido, and everyone seemed to love that bald character.
Mhm. Yeah.
Who's with Honora at the end. I didn't click with him. I didn't. Yeah. But yeah, I did love it, and I'm agreeing with you guys where I think it's going to be interesting, like in the lead up to the Oscars, how it gets promoted.
Yeah, absolutely. Terrific film, and yeah, cannot wait to sort of see the conversation grow, and now that it's out here in Australia as well.
Absolutely.
So now it's Luca, you and I. So your number 1 is my number 2.
Okay.
So why don't
Ooh.
you go ahead and start us off with this one? I'm very passionate about my enjoyment for this one. Go for it.
All right. My number 1 was Civil War, which I found to be a lot different than I thought it would be. I think the biggest part that I liked about it is I felt like you feel like you're a spectator in it. Like, obviously it's about a war in America, but it felt really real, and it felt like it's something that really could happen. I think that's something that Alex Garland does so well. Like, is it feels so real. But I liked the perspective. I loved like the feeling of being a spectator with the photojournalists, and like that's really all they care about in the film is just trying to get the perfect photo. And I just loved the character dynamics, especially between I can't remember their names, with the younger girl and the older woman. And how the younger girl shoots on just like it's like a Nikon F2 film camera on a black and white stock. Like that's such a cool like attention to detail, and you can tell that such care was put into portraying these characters in the film. But I loved mostly the journey that they go through, I guess. Um, and it feels so impactful, the film, and all the deaths that happen throughout, because a lot of people do die, but I guess it felt like, yeah, very surreal to watch because it's something that could happen, I guess. And the perspectives of these characters are people that would exist in real life, you know, these kind of photojournalists that's kind of all they care about is like, you know, taking photos of kind of these major events and trying to get to the president, because I'm sure that if something like this happened, the president would be a hot topic to try and interview. So, like, I guess that journey to Washington D.C. and then the eventual ending, I loved the ending. Like the like those guys standing over the president's body, and then the older photographer dying, and like her taking a photo of it. Like it's just outstanding. It's so well done, and it feels so like vicious and real. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think it has some of the best. I mean, it has my best scene of the year, which has to be the scene with Jesse Plemons. The
Mm.
"What kind of American are you?" sequence. Like that scene is just haunting and so dark and so well played. And when you hear the story that the person who was originally meant to play it sort of had to, cancel on that. That um the lead actress, that's her partner, came and just helped out for a couple of days, and to get that scene in, and it's by far my scene of the year, that it just is remarkable and so tense. It's a film that says a lot, and I love the journey they go on. I mean, I agree with you. I think there's some moments, such as when they're in that town that pretends like the war isn't happening. That scene really stands out to me as well. That they're a part of the war, but they're pretending like it doesn't exist, and then that camera pan upwards to see this, the snipers on the roof watching them. Just incredible filmmaking, really engaging characters, and just so well directed. I can't sort of praise this film enough with just how surprisingly great it was, because I think a lot of people went in expecting some kind of action war film set in a civil war in the US, but it wasn't. It was, as you said, Luca, grounded, tackling a topic about journalism in war that I find outside of documentaries isn't really looked at, and done in a way that you really connect with these characters. So I completely agree with you that Civil War is one of the best films of the year, and it comes in at my number 2 for the record as well. So that brings it around to my number 1 of the year, which is a film that is on everyone's list except for you, Tom. But that is Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 is we've lost Luca, it looks like, by the way.
We lost Luca.
We have lost Luca. My number 1 of the year is Dune Part 2, which is Luca's third, and Lockie, your third as well. Dune Part 2 is just a film that has a very special place in my heart. I saw it twice in IMAX, one in 70mm, one in the 4K laser. Getting to interview Greg Fraser was sort of the start of my, passion to sort of interview people and talk to filmmakers, and that film is just always going to stay with me. It's so remarkable in what it achieves as a sequel, but beyond that, it lands the grandeur, the visuals, the story elements, that it manages to balance so many characters and so many plot lines, that it acts as this sort of cautionary tale on messianic figures. I just ultimately found it to be so engaging. I could watch it so many times and be engaged the whole time. Truly terrific performance by all people involved. Some comedy by Javier Bardem. Timothy Chalamet has a lot to do in terms of, grappling with the issues that his character comes across. Dune Part 2 is, easily my top of the year, and I hope it gets some recognition coming awards. I've always connected with Denis films, and this film, undoubtedly, since I saw it, I knew it was going to be at least in the top 3, and it absolutely comes into the fray as my number 1.
Yeah, completely agree. Such a spectacle. Such a great film to go and see. I think it did a really good job of following up Dune Part 1, which it kind of takes up right after it. I think it's half an hour after or something, and it just flows so nicely between the two.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. It really does. It's such a great double viewing. Dune Part 2. And I think it's something that it's a blockbuster where every department is working incredibly well at the top of their game, but also dealing with, lots of themes and ideas that are so complex, that doesn't treat the audience, just like, some spectator who, doesn't have any thoughts for their own. It's super smart with how it's done and plays with characters in such an engaging way. So, yeah, that absolutely comes in at my number one. So, I believe that is our favorite films of the year. Why don't we do a quick recap? So, Lockie, do you want to run us through yours from 10 to 1?
Yeah, sure. So number 10, I had Civil War. Then we've got Furiosa, Memoir of a Snail, Nosferatu, The Substance, Perfect Days, Challenges, June Part 2, La Chimera, and then Anora at number 1.
Perfect. Awesome. And Tom?
So I had Anora number 10, All of Us Strangers, Long Legs, Alien Romulus, Wicked at 5, May December, Anatomy of a Fall, Sunflower, The Substance, and Poor Things at number 1.
Yep. And I had June. Sorry, no, I didn't. I had Furiosa, I had Conclave, I had Deadpool Wolverine, I had Heretic, Anora, Alien Romulus, Challenges, The Substance, number 2, Civil War, and number 1, June Part 2. If Luca can't join us, I'll read out his. So, Luca's top 10 favorites of the year include The Fall Guy, Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Gladiator 2, Challenges, The Substance, Perfect Days, June Part 2, Alien Romulus, and number 1, Civil War. That was so much fun, guys. Thank you so much for participating in that. I think it's been a great year for cinema. There's been a couple of times during the year that it seemed a bit wobbly, but I think it was ultimately there were some great releases this year, and I think we got very lucky with that. And I cannot wait to see what happens with 2025. It's going to be an interesting year.
At the Berlinale, maybe.
At the Berlinale,
Yeah,
yes.
good start.
A few good films. Yeah.
I'm so fascinated. Have you checked out the program yet?
Yeah, I think they've still only just released like the first bit. I don't think they've released the full. Is that right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
But it sounds very good from what's
and
come
Tilda
out.
Swinton getting the Golden Bear, so hopefully we'll get a few of her films there too, which is awesome.
Fingers crossed. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I should also say I did a little calculating, trying to go back to my maths days, and I calculated the Clap Podcast top 5 favorite films of the year, so combining all our lists to determine a top 5. So I asked each of us to rank the top 10, with 1 being our most favorite and 10 being our least favorite. I sort of did it by ranking, so I sort of used the point system, so gave 10 points for first place, 9 points for second place, 8 points for third place, and sort of did the average of that.
Nice.
When we averaged the scores for each movie across all of us, at number 5, we have Challenges. At number 4, we have Alien Romulus. At number 3, we have Civil War. At number 2, we have The Substance. And at number 1, we do have June Part 2.
That's a good list.
It's a good list.
Yeah.
It's a very good
solid.
list. And really strong.
Something for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good
and
list.
I loved how we had a film like The Substance in there too. Sort of not necessarily expected to be a big blockbuster release, but, a sort of a slightly smaller film that we all really love. So great to see something like that coming in at second place is really cool as well. Thank you so much for joining me on the episode this week, guys. I really appreciate it. It was a great way.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, thanks,
of course.
Will.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm sure Luca is with us. His internet dropped out for listeners, unfortunately. But we'll absolutely see you guys back on the podcast at some point. Really great way to start off the year by looking at the one prior. And I cannot wait for people to sort of see what we have coming in store for the podcast in the following weeks and months. We got some great stuff planned. So thank you for joining me for a recap of the year.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys.
Thanks, Will. Bye, guys.
No worries.